This is Gillie Priest Revolutionary Channel, and welcome once again to the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary session number 2. Hope you enjoy, and please remember to support Forged by Time, my autobiography that is available on Amazon. Thank you very much. Greetings, brethren and sisters, and welcome once again to the Gillie Priest Revolutionary TV channel, which is a subsidiary of the Forged by Time Limited Corporation. And once again, welcome to the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary, and this is going to be session number 2. But to begin with, I'm going to just touch upon a few things, and one of the things I would like to begin with is basically dealing with some of the responses, that comments that was made in terms of questions and statement to the first session, which was the introductory session to the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary. And most of the comment was shout out. One from Negos Negas, and basically say respect, give thanks. And one from Kena in Toby Coke, and this person was just letting me know that they are from Ontario, Canada. And I've asked some of the brethren them if they do remember when they make comment to kind of identify for me the country where they are from and the state where they are from, because so I could get a basic idea of the different countries and continents and communities and towns that people will be participating from in these sessions of the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary. Now, there's one response that came from Johnny Johnson, and this one is basically in reference to the highlights that I gave in the first session to certain Rastafari brethren and sisters whom I named out personally, who have great recognition. That was not to exclude any others in the development of the Rastafari movement. And this brethren, Johnny Johnson, is basically saying, I remember and respect all Rastologists who live vacations and help endorsement of true Rasta tenants like Rest in Peace, Ras ESP McPherson, Ras Gladstone Robinson. I'm very familiar with the name ESP McPherson. ESP McPherson, as I can recall, is a brethren that was for years living in New York City, and he was very involved in both the Rastafari movement as well as the Marcus Garvey People's Progressive Party. And one of the occasions where the Rastafari movement was first given recognition to in the state of New York, the very first service that was held in the state of New York in commencing the recognition of the Rastafari movement within the prison system. This brethren, ESP McPherson, he was present. So I did meet him personally, exchange a few words with him. I had knowledge of him even before meeting him because of all the Rastafari documents that I read that were produced from New York City and New York State. He authored a lot of them. So that was also shout out to Johnny Johnson for putting forth those two names, ESP McPherson and Ras Gladstone Robinson. Let me run through some of the other comments made. The brethren Victor Lane, I think he's out of France via Saint Martin, and he kind of make reference to Friedrich Nietzsche said that the essential elements in the black art of obfuscation is not that it wants to darken individual understanding, but that it wants to blacken our picture of the world and darken our ideas of existence. And he went on to say a few other things, but just want to highlight that part right there. Another brethren, Ronald D., he basically stated that Rastafarian culture is a mixed culture, Hinduism and Christianity, which is not of our forefathers' tradition. Our culture and duty is to keep the Most High Yahweh laws, statutes, and commandments. And then he went on to quote some Bible scriptures. Let me see if there's another one. Another one went on to state basically that my brother, and this is Saint Ronald, he said, my brother, you should know that Israelian and Israelites are two different people. Israelians are Ashkenazis from the seed of Amalek, who were one of the grandsons of Esau, the first red-eared skinned man. Israelites are the seeds of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, the Prince of Power. Well, the only thing I would basically say in response to that is that this Rastafari Promise Key Seminary is not going to be involved in debating the Bible, discussing who are the Israelites, who are not the Israelites. Those are for other occasions, and we will address those in independent programs and broadcasts that will be put forth on the Gillie Revolutionary TV channel. But for the purposes of the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary, these type of discussion will not be engaging. I do not know exactly what the brethren was responding to, why he made that statement. But I guess he has the relevance of why he's making that statement. Maybe it could have been because of some of the broadcast that was done on this program. I don't really know, but take that for what it is worth. One brethren's Wolde Genu is basically stating that he appreciates the fact that the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary will be putting forward some chants, which we are going to put forward at least one chant for every session of the program. One brethren by the name of Anthony Barrett basically saying, he said, brethren, you need to read more of His Imperial Majesty works. I don't know why he makes that statement or in what reference that he believes that I may need to read more of His Imperial Majesty works. And when I read this one, I kind of find it funny because I would really appreciate if this brethren could tell me the ones that I have not read. And I'm going to assume that there may have been works that been put forth by His Imperial Majesty that I may have not have read, but every one of them that I've came across, put my hands and I have read them, and the two that basically stand out in my mind are Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Utterances of His Majesty, an anthology basically of all his speeches and presentations that His Majesty made. And I read the autobiography of His Majesty that was written by His Majesty, and I read everything that I could get my hand on. So I don't know what triggered this response, but I do appreciate it. And if there are some readings that you believe I have not read of the utterances of His Majesty, please bring them to me. And if I have not read them yet, I certainly will read them. And basically, let me see if there's any more there I should respond to. One brethren is called is at JCCJJCCJ, and it's basically say he's from the I guess he's saying he's listening from the Congo. Do appreciate someone from the Congo coming in here, and it says something at the bottom that translate to English. I don't know what that is in reference to. Maybe I am using too much strong of a Jamaican language when I'm making the presentation, so maybe that's why he's asking. He basically typed in translate to English. So I will try to put forward a more English defined language presentation to the best of my ability. Okay. And those are the ones that I see basically relevant to response. The other one I just basically giving me appreciative comments and acknowledging the fruitfulness of this seminary presentation, and those speak and stand for themselves. I just really wanted to read those that implies some type of constructive criticism maybe, and we call for that. We want to have constructive criticism and help me forward this program in a way that's most beneficial to those who are listening. Now, this week we're going to deal with the brain. And the reason why we're going to deal with the brain is because the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary, and I'm going to reiterate this over and over whenever I feel it's necessary. This seminary will not be indulged in debating things of a religious nature. We will not be debating Rastafari versus Christianity versus Islam versus the Israelite versus any other religiosity formation. That is not the concern, that is not the charter, that is not the prerogative of the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary. The Rastafari Promise Key Seminary, to reiterate it once more, we are here to charter a new path. We are here to push forth this new faculty of Rastafari. And this new faculty of Rastafari is not to condemn any formation of Rastafari, any doctrinal presentation of Rastafari that anyone may be adhering to. That is the least of our concern. The Rastafari Promise Key Seminary is to chart forward the liberation of the mind through the proper nurturing of the brain. Because you see what happens, we have the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary. We don't believe that we need to come here and present to you certain doctrinal presentation or certain doctrinal fact for you to adhere to, for you to obey, for you to abide by, in order to claim that whether or not you are Rastafari. And that is none of our concern from this seminary. Because we are of the belief that this is once you liberate the brain of man and woman and pitney, them know what to choose, them know what to believe, them know what to adhere to. So this seminary is not going to come here and preach any doctrinal presentation and telling you this is what you must believe, this is what you must adhere to, this is what makes you Rastafari. We already make it known and clear. Every African and people of African descent is a member of the Rastafari movement already. This is this seminary's position. So we are here to free the African race by freeing their mind through the proper nurturing of the brain. And like we said in the last presentation, we are not here to provide any man with a fish. We are not here to provide any man with a particular doctrine. We are here to free up the brain, so you become the master of your existence, the master of your destiny, the master of what you choose and what you reject. And that is where we're going to basically proceed from. So in order to do that, after giving careful contemplation to the next stage and for session 2 of the Rastafari Promise Key Series, is to basically give a synopsis and a summary upon the brain. And when you talk about the process of the brain, right, we go back to when we hear the virgins, them always are burn fire. Fire upon this, fire upon that, burn this out, burn that out. It coming from a very positional place within the Rastafari movement, and it has a biological reference also, and in particular and in specific to the brain. You see, the brain is an organ, and it is an organ made up of, among other things, neurons. And there are billions of neurons within the human that makes up the human brain. And even these billions of neurons, they are categorized and segmentized in groupings in terms of the particular functions that particular neurons play within the function of the brain. So there are neurons that deal with sight, there are neurons that deal with smell, there are neurons that deal with taste, there are neurons that deal with pain. And whenever you manipulate any one of these neurons that have these particular functions, you manipulate the response and the signal receiving of those particular neurons within the brain. Now, these neurons, whenever they are fully activated, these neurons are basically made up of electrochemicals. And electrochemicals are a form of proteins. Proteins are different atomized development of the neuron. There are times when these neurons, which are made up of electrochemical, when they function as electricity, and then there are certain times when they transform themselves into chemicals, into liquid chemicals. So these neurons fluctuate between being electrical and being chemical. It's like a miracle that happens in the brain. And whenever this process is fully functioning in the brain at its optimal level, it is referred to as the Ephraim process. And we are going to kind of delve into this Ephraim process to give us a better understanding of the brain. Because if we are going to speak about mastering the brain, mastering ourselves, mastering our mind, we need to have a synopsis. We need to have a brief understanding of these billions of neurons that make up the human being brain. And whenever these neurons are fully functional, they light up like fires. They are literal fires, electrical fires that are at its optimal level within the brain. So within this blackness of the brain, whenever this brain reaches its optimal functional level, it's light up through the functioning of electricity, literally electricity and chemicals. Now we're going to look at these neurons, and in order not to make this presentation in a vacuum, I went up outside and I uprooted a plant. And I want you to basically look at this plant, because it is the closest thing that I can come to demonstrate to you what a neuron in the brain look like. And to identify this, these are the leaves of the trees, and these are the parts on a plant that receives energy from the sun, the leaves, right? Photosynthesis takes place through the leaves of the tree. Then you have a stem that runs on from the tree, from the plant, and you have the roots. And these are the root, the veins of the tree that goes down into the soil and draw nutrients and water and oxygen and all that from the soil. So it's a basic plant. The name of it I don't know, but what is significant is to demonstrate something to you. And why I uproot this to demonstrate to you, because this closely resembles what each individual neurons looks like in the brain. And there are a billion, more than a billion, billions of neurons in the brain that are developed in the brain individually. Though if you look at them with your eyes, and if you look at them within the brain under a certain average microscope, these neurons will appear like they're attached to each other. But when they use the most powerfulest microscopes in the world, they realize that unseen to the eye and unseen, unnoticeable to the lesser powerful microscopes, the neurons doesn't touch each other. So there are billions of neurons in the brain that resembles just like this, that does not touch each other in the brain. All right. Now, what is the function of these neurons in the brain? The function of these neurons in the brain is you perform basically three. You have the internal neurons, you have the sensory neurons, and you have the motor neurons. These are just broad overall groupings of three functions. They perform thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of different functions, but all of these functions can be grouped under three separate headings: sensory, internal, and motor. Now let's deal with sensory. These neurons that makes up the brain that deal with sensory. Sensory is really coming from the 5 senses. These neurons draws information that the 5 senses of the human being brings in from the external world. So there are neurons. One of the main overarching function of a neuron is to bring in information from the outside world through the senses: seeing, smell, touching, tasting, hearing. All of these information that are brought in by these 5 senses goes to particular neurons. There are another sets of neurons, overarching collective neurons, which are the internal neurons. And these internal neurons, these are the neurons that collects information from within the body, bringing it up through the spine, brings it up to the spinal column, and it goes to these particular neurons that deal with internal. Now, what type of information? Just as the sensory neuron brings in information from the outside that is provided to the brain through the 5 senses, the internal system brings in information from within the body, and it lets you know when there is something wrong inside the body. It lets you know when something impinges on the comfort of the body. It lets you know internally within the sensory where there are a chemical imbalance within the body. It lets you know when the body is in pain. It lets you know when the body is starving. It lets you know when the body is in need of refurbishing. It lets you know when the body is in need of rest. That is what the internal neurons overall deals with. Then you have the neurons that deal with the motor, meaning the minor and major motors of the body. These are neurons that helps the bodies to flex, to walk, to hold a pen, to shake, to do small things, to do large things, to wiggle your toes. Overall, the motor, the fine and major motors of the body, the movements of the muscles and the contraction of the muscles within the body goes to these neurons in the brain. So there are 3 major groupings, even though neurons in the brain does thousands of different functions. All of these functions are grouped under 3 major sets of neurons: the sensory neurons, the internal neurons, and the motor neurons. Okay. Now, when we look at this plant right here, right, what we are seeing on the neurons in the brain, these branches in here represent what they call the dendrites. And these dendrites collects the information, whether it collects the information from the senses that is brought in to the brain from the outside, or it collects the information from the internal, the spinal cord and the spinal stem, or it contacts information from the muscles of the body, which are the motor neurons. The motor neurons brings and sends information from the muscles. The internal neurons brings and send information from the internal structure of the body, and the sensory neurons brings and sends information from the senses that it picks up from the outside. So that's one thing right there. So when you come down here now, right, you have basically what they call the axon. And the axon is what basically sends the information. So when the information comes in from the dendrites, the information is sent down the axon. This biologically in the neuron is referred to as the axon. The axon sends the information down because it has to transport this information, whether the information is an internal information, whether it is a motor information, or whether it's a sensory information. It goes down and travels through the axon. Now, it's traveled through the axon electrically, through literally electrical currents in a lighted fashion. and it travels all the way down the axon till it comes down to what is called as the Millal sheet, right? The Millal sheet is an insulation. The Millal sheet is an insulation that covers the axon. You know, like when you look at an electric wire, the raw wire is encapsulated in a plastic covering, whether it's in red or black, or what it covers, so it's an electrical insulator, so when you touch it, it doesn't shock you. Well, the axon that travels, that the electrical currents travels through in the brain, is covered by a Millal sheet in order to protect it so it does not lose its electrical power before it gets transported to the neurons that is going to take it to its correct destination. When that information comes down here, and it looks exactly like this root of this plant here that I'm showing you, look exactly like that. These are down here are referred to as snaps. And these snaps, whereas when the electricity comes down here, it goes into these snaps. It goes into these veins right here. And once it hits the snaps, it begins to be transformed from electrical into chemical. Why it needs chemical? Because the electrical current that comes down the axon, it does not jumps over when it reaches to the snaps. It does not jumps over and attaches itself to the dendrites of the other neuron that is sending the signal to. When it comes down here, it comes down to the synapses and it transforms it. The electricity transforms itself into a liquid chemical. That liquid chemical is what floats over, carries the information that the electrical current brought down, and it transfers it over to the next neuron that is attached to that. So each neuron is attached to the next neuron, from the synapses to the dendrites, from a synapses to a dendrite, from a synapses to a dendrite to the other plant, and then that information then goes down the axon of the next neuron down into the synapses, which is close enough to the next dendrites of the next neuron, and it sends the information on. So that is the main reason why I brought this plan, so to make it more demonstrable to you the function of the brain. When we speak of the brain, we are speaking of the biological composition of this particular organ that resides in each and every human being head. So we know, since we have that idea of how the brain functions through these billions of neurons that collects information through the sensory internally and through the motors of the body, through the muscles, through the internal chemical and structural organs of the body, and from the five senses, we know that these neurons, even though they perform thousands of functions within the brain, they are grouped under three relative terms: the sensory neurons, the internal neurons, and the motor neurons. So we have that basic idea of the function of the brain. And we know that each and every chemical in the body, each and every muscle in the body, each and every organ in the body, and everything on the external existence of the body, everything that lays outside of the body, corresponds with the brain. Everything that's internal to the body corresponds to the brain. The movements of every aspect of the human being corresponds with the brain. So now we come to a basic fundamental question now. That's derived from having a basic understanding of the neurons in the brain and the kind of makeup of the brain in the most simplistic terms, so we do not get bogged down into teaching biology basically. But that's the basic part I want you to understand. Now we're going to lead from that to a basic question when we ask, who am I? Who am I as an individual? Who am I as a human being? And over the centuries and over the millenniums, as there are numerical human beings, there are numerical answers to the question, who am I? Some people will tell you in the most rhetorical terms, I am who I am, that's the way I am, and that's the way I am going to be, and no one can change me. And then you say, define that I am to me. And then all of a sudden, now the tongue get tied. Them can't define this I am. See? But we grew up coming out of Africa where we had the simple term that was taught to us by our philosophers. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a man thinketh, that is I am. And these are the reasons why when we went through oppression and we went through slavery and we went through colonialism, the number one fundamental prerogative of the oppressor was to change the way you were taught to think and to reshape and reform you into who they wanted you to be. So we know that when we delve into the process of the brain and we understand that the brain gives off a power which is collectively referred to as the mind, that thinking process. Now, let's try to envision something that can better illustrate what we mean by the brain and the mind. And I always reference back to electricity, the light that you see shines from a bulb in your house, in your office, in your car, whatever. The light is a product that forms out of a generator that was constructed physically to put forth electricity. And this electricity is what powers and empowers other implements. So you go in any country where there's a car, there's a generator, there's an engine, there is something within that motor vehicle, there is something within that current, there is something within that house, there is something in that nature that is physically constructed to generate electricity, to generate what we call in Jamaica current. Right? So when you turn on your light and you switch that flick, and that electricity that was created from a generator, whether in the house, in the yard, in the car, whatever, it runs through these wires, right? And for the brain, it runs down the axon. It comes down the axon. In your house, you would say it runs through the electrical wire. And it manifests itself into light. And the light envelopes all around us. You cannot touch it. You cannot see it in the sense of seeing the individual particles. You cannot manipulate it in that sense through different dimensional from your own doings. Well, it's the same thing with the brain. The brain, through its electrochemical manifestation, gives off this supreme manifestation of which we call the mind, which allows us to think, which allows us to observe internally, which allows the brain, which allows the mind to transpose itself into universes of its own imagination, of its own construct. It allows the human being to contemplate itself. It allows the mind to contemplate the very brain that gives it manifestation. Where the mind can ask itself, what is this brain that I evolve out of? That is the power of the mind in reference to the brain. So as the brain is nurtured, However you nurture the brain, it is going to produce a particular mindset. And in the context of the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary, we are talking about where the brain is going to produce a mind that either liberates you, or oppresses you, or captivates you, or imprisons you. So we have to understand the relevance between the brain and the mind and the question, who am I? Some people, you see, one of the importance of life and liberty is to know where each and every individual places the very life that they call their own, you know. What entity do you places your life in? What element of existence is identifiable with you, who you claim you are? Some of us, we claim we are flesh and blood. The I am is the manifestation of our flesh and blood. Some of us, the I am is the manifestation of the material things that we have, or the material things that we lack, the material things that we desire. That is what we identify as who I am as an individual. Now let's go back to Babylon. The way how we as a people have been and were indoctrinated over centuries by the Babylonians, we were taught and indoctrinated into a concept where our very flesh and blood was the answer to who am I? We places the existence of our life within our flesh and blood. And what is the detriment of that? Because as long as you place life where it can be manipulated and threatened and extorted from without, then you already lose the fight, my brother. So the reason why Babylon indoctrinates us to see life as flesh and blood is so that they have all the implements to threaten your flesh and blood, to threaten where you have placed life, so you will always have to bow down to his threats and indoctrination. Yeah. So the system teaches you where to place life. And they decide to teach you where to place life, where it makes you most vulnerable to their threat and exploitation. So people place life based upon a lack of knowledge in many different things that can be used as a very threat against you. So if you place life within your material wealth, then all the system have to do is threaten to take away your wealth, you know. And once it threaten to take away your wealth, then within your cranium, within your mind, life no longer worth living without those material things. So you know what? I'm going to give in to the threat. And if you place life within your flesh and blood, then all the system have to do is threaten your flesh and blood. Beat you, whip you, kill you, castrate you, sodomize you. And in order not to be violated there where you have placed life, then you give in, you acquiesce to the wills and the desires and the wishes of the oppressors. But what if you place life within the confines of a body of ideas that cannot die? Think about that. What if you answer that question, who am I? By coming to the understanding that life is constructed out of a body of knowledge, a body of ideas that is life affirming, that cannot be extinguished. Then no man can threaten you, man. No system can threaten you. No one can tell you what to believe and what not to believe. No one can tell you what to adhere to and what not to adhere to, because you have a liberated mind that cipher out truths and facts as it was meant to be ciphered out through personal investigation and never ever through indoctrination. And when you carry and develop reasoning to that contextual level, then you realize now you're engaging with mathematics beyond arithmetic. Because one of the things you learn through the evolution of the mind, through the proper nurturing of the brain, so that the proper mind can evolve, is that there's a constancy that exists within all mathematical equation. Now, I'm going to simplify that what we mean by this. If you take the numeral 1 plus 1, or you take the basic arithmetic 2 times 2, you take the basic division 10 divided by 2. Those are just numerical numbers that represents nothing, you know. Without being properly contextualized, 1 plus 1 means nothing. 2 times 2 means nothing. 10 divided by 2 means nothing. Until you identify those numbers with an object. So you could say 1 mango times another mango equal 2 mangoes. You understand? 2 houses times 2 more houses, 2 times 2 is 4. 10 apples divided by 2, we get 5. Until you adapt a object to these arithmetic numbers means nothing beyond its theoretical value. But let's carry this reasoning a little deeper. Whenever you say 1 plus 1 equal 2, that mathematical equation of 1 plus 1 equal 2 is applicable to any object anywhere on the face of this earth. Think about that. So 1 plus 1 equal 2. If you apply it to mango, it's the same thing in Jamaica, as in Trinidad, as in Barbados, as in Europe, as in Africa, as in... So we know that mathematical equation and arithmetic equation are universal. 2 times 2 in Jamaica does not mean something different when you do 2 times 2 in China, or 2 times 2 in Russia, or 2 times... These are universal mathematical and arithmetical equations. So when we learn to think in mathematical forms and apply it within that logical sequential existence, it's applicable everywhere you go in this world. So an intelligent man in Jamaica will be an intelligent man in China, will be an intelligent man in Africa, will be an intelligent man throughout the Caribbean. Because once you come into the full understanding that the science of mathematics, the science of equation, the science of evaluation is universally applicable. And this comes through the proper nurturing of the brain so the correct mind can evolve. So you are what you think. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a woman thinketh, so is she. As a child thinketh, so is he or she. It's not complicated more than that, brethren. And I down the trajectory there. I down the avenue there. And a new faculty that we bring to Rastafari. We don't need for there in the earth. I get up every day and debate about who are God and who are not God. And which tribe right. And which tribe. We are all that and more. Let's not forget the more. We are all that and more. But when we as a race evolve ourselves within the true and proper universal mathematical thinking capacity, which once we were there, not on the most maximal, optimal level, but we were at that pinnacle one time, pinnacle in comparison to others, where we were masters of this earth, the rulers of civilization, the guardian of civilization. And what are we 2,005 years from here? How will we get up every day and a debate about who are God? And a debate about which prayer are the right prayer? And a debate about what to eat and when not to eat and we fi drink, and we no fi drink. Nah, man, that's seminary. The Rastafari promise key said we're not evolving to any such institution. We going to create and produce leaders of free thinking capacity that will go on and join liberation movements and enhance our own liberation movement to liberate the African race upon the face of the earth. That is our objective. That is our charter. That is our challenge. To have a free mind. A mind that is mathematically equipped to decipher any equation under any circumstances. Because we must learn and come into the full knowledge of who we are. We must come into the full knowledge of the supremacy and the physical level of the brain. We must learn to see the organ of the brain as the most fundamental and important biological existence within ourselves. But not as the supreme. Because what is supreme to the brain is the mind. Because the mind can evaluate the brain, but the brain cannot evaluate the mind. The brain is just that biological, material, organic component that produces an electrochemical substance that transforms itself into the thinking capacity known as the mind. And as the mind thinketh, so am I. We are nothing outside of how we think. There is no existence worth observing outside of our own thinking capacity. Every man is either liberated or every man is either confined to the levels and structures of his own or her own thinking capacity. Think about that, family. All a deep meds upon that. And if you can conceptualize what I man just say mathematically, then a paradigm shift for those of us who needs to make that paradigm shift, a paradigm shift in answering the question, who am I? Then you know what? We must flee from those Babylonian concepts that has placed the existence of life in anything physical, in anything that's material. Because we were taught to see life on that physical level by the Babylonians, because then the Babylonians' number one intention was to use threat and violence to that place where you was placed in life in order that they can regulate you and confine you. Study, observation, holding the proper meds, going within the cranium of the mind and deciphering the obstacles of our life, the obstacles to our liberation, the obstacles is within your own capacity. No man outside of yourself can free you. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Oh. Have no fear for atomic energy, for none of them can stop the... Yeah, man. Yeah, man. That is no shallow talk. That is no weak talk, family. So, that is the important. So, in a summary fashion, brethren, the brain is the most important biological organ. But it is not the most of the manifestation of any one of our existence. It is made up of billions and billions of neurons. And these neurons perform thousands of different functions. But these thousands of different functions can be grouped under 3 basic elements. Neurons that responds to things that comes and go through the sensory, the 5 senses. Neurons that deal with the internal organs of the human being that comes up the spinal cord and go into the spinal brain stem. And you have neurons that deal with the motor, the physical, fine and major movements of the muscles within the body. So all of these sensories that make up the neurons is to gather information for the brain. Is to gather information for the brain. So the brain now uses this information, synthesize this information, organically manipulate this information that brings into the brain through the neurons of the brain, transform this information into electrical, chemical, protein, and combinations and nuances of these electrochemical protein manifests an evolutionary power which is referred to as the mind. This mind thinketh forth ideas and thoughts. And these ideas and thoughts that you decide to adhere to, which is properly calculated mathematically towards proper equation, that is what evolves into who you are as a I am, as a person, as an individual, as a man, as a woman thinketh, so is he or she. Therefore, there is where your life abideth. And from that simple equation, we have known throughout existence that for a man's idea, for a woman's idea, that idea that he or she has evolved into, you see, I come at it a different way. We must learn to grow and to evolve into this I am, into this Christ-like mind, into this messianic mind, where who you are is fully accepted as that which you believe, that which you know, that which you will bleed for, that which you will bleed for, that which you will die for, that which you will kill for, that you will give everything for. What is that? That which you think it and evolve into who you are. You must learn to see, you must all learn to see yourself as a body of ideas, of life affirming ideas. And once the I am has evolved into a life affirming collective organic body of ideas, you know where that take with virgin and sister? That take you back to the teachings that were taught to us by our elders, that Rasta man cannot die, Rasta woman cannot die, Rasta children cannot die. We all live forever once we place life in life affirming conceptual ideas, because life cannot die. So before we go into these lessons, and we're going to really commence them, I wanted us to fully understand the I am, and how do we arrive at the proper mathematical conception of who am I as an individual. We have to get that in our brain. We must build and identify and fashion our very life out of life affirming ideas, where our very life is that of life affirming ideas, and have nothing physical, nothing biological, nothing external to that. Now, I'm going to touch upon one more thing, before I close out session 2 of the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary. And I wanted to delve into that. Before, I wanted to literally delve into one of the Rastafari chants. Before I delve into that lesson, but I'm still going to touch upon this chant because it's supposed to be there. And this chant is a chant to the fireman when the sun rises in the morning, as symbolized by the sun. I remember when we talk about, and I really did it this way because I want to identify, when we say the fireman, the concept of the fireman is a concept that was developed out of the electrical chemical transposition and transportation that take place in the axon of the neurons from the dendrite to the synapses in the brain. And when it's light, it is straight to fire. When the electrical current goes out to send signals to transport a message from one neuron, it literally transposes itself through fire. So when we speak of a fire mind, fire is what purifies all things. Just as the sun has the ability to indulge in the purification process upon the face of the earth. So this is a chant to the fire mind. This is a chant to a brain that is functioning on its most optimal level as when the sun rises to its highest zenith and in the physical universe. It's a behold the power of resurrection. I, Rastafari, the scribe of the holy offerings of all genius, said, a fully functioning brain where the electrochemical processes is at its most optimal performance level is a brain that is resurrected, whether within an individual or within a collective human being. So our homage where we're going to pay is to the mind as evolved through the processes of the brain. Now, one of the things I want to touch on when I speak of chants, when we are chant, we're not chant to nothing external and asking nothing external to imbue us with our needs and our wants. No. And like what Babylon teaches us, so when you pray, you sit down and you pray and you imagine something external from you and you pray to that entity and then you wait for that entity answer your prayer. No. The new faculty of Rastafari is to give a motive chance that triggers and regulate and enhance the chemical, the electrochemical protein structure of the human body to reinvigorate it at its most optimal level so that we can go out and achieve that which we desire. We use chants to manipulate our electrochemical structure within our own existence. That is an easy thing. That is nothing miraculous in the sense where you go down and you give chant and you pray to some entity out there and expecting that. That is Babylonian teachings. That is Babylon indoctrinating to looking for answers to your problem external of yourself. We deal with chants that are going to physically. You ever notice when you're going to a party or you're going to a dance, a certain type of music start playing, and it just changes your whole electrochemical construct of your feelings. If you're going there, you think about something negative that took place 20 minutes ago when you hear certain music, it just changes your whole electrochemical construct of your existence and you're going a different vibrational order. You're going to have different frequential order. It's only because the chemical structure your body gets rearranged, you know. Certain chemicals shut down, certain chemicals moderate, and certain chemicals get pushed up. That is why certain food can make you feel a certain way. Because certain food interact with the chemical structure of your body in different way. You eat certain food and you get sick. You eat certain food and psychologically you're messed up. You eat certain food biologically you feel empowered. So these are not no impossibility or nothing mystical about chance. Chance have the ability to emote. Certain chance has the ability to emote certain chemical reconstruct within your mental and your physical. So you are better enhanced and better prepared for that which you seek and desire. Homage to thee, O thou who hast came as Rastafari, the creator of geniuses. Thou art seated on thy throne, thou risest up in the mind, illumining the femininity, the source of our life. Thou art seated on thy throne as the king of the genius. Thy femininity, the source of our life, stretch it out her hands and perform it an act of homage to thee. The mind is your throne. The mind is the throne of the Almighty. The mind is the Almighty. The mind is at its most optimal level, is the fire mind. To it we must pay homage. It is both masculine and feminine, depending on a particular function that is to be indulged. And one of the lessons coming up, we're going to deal with what we mean by femininity and masculinity, which has nothing to do with male or female. Male or female is only one aspect or two aspects of femininity and masculinity, but not exclusively. The domain of the west of the mind receiveth thee with satisfaction. Truth embraceth thee at the two seasons of the day, morning and evening. May the fire mind give glory and power and truth speaking, and the appearance as a living being, so that I may gaze upon the east and the west of the mind, to the inner spirituality of the beings of the power of resurrection. The left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, the west of the brain and the east of the brain, the left of the brain and the right side of the brain, which basically mean the same thing. Though perform two different functions or two different sets of functions, when they merge as one, when the east merge with the west, then that's the power of real and true resurrection, when the individual human being gets resurrected from flesh and blood into as a man thinketh, as a woman thinketh, so is he or she. I, Rastafari, who speaketh truth before the power of resurrection, and who said, Hail, O all ye righteous of the house of the spiritual being, who wears Zion of the mind and the body in a balance, and who giveth mental food to the mentally dead. How you think, how each and every individual think and should think, must come in alliance with the biological manifestation. Meaning, how you think, you must strive to act that way. We must not conform our thinking to how we act. We must not act away and then try to justify it mentally. Because that's what most human beings do. Whatever appeals to the biological structure of the individual, we try to bring the mind in a doctrinal way, in conformity to our physical desire. No. Life is about struggling to bring the biological in line with the mental. That is what our physical manifestation should be. Hail, righteous of the earth, who are one, thou creator of mortals, and of the companies of the genius of the south, and of the north, of the west, and of the east, ascribe ye praises to the fire mind. Give chant and praises to the correct way of thinking. Not don't giving no chant and praises to external things. Because the thing is this, when you speak of the genius of the mind, when the mind exists within its proper mathematical formation, it comes in alliance with each and every mind that is thinking within that same evolutionary capacity, So we all become one. That is why human being, when you think the same way and act the same way, you can move as one to secure your liberation and freedom from those who desires and wishes to chain you, lifelong, perpetual oppression. Because if we think in a million different ways, we lack the ability to move as one. You see the key? The Jah of Zion, the King, life, stretcheth, strength and health be to him, the maker of the genius. We give chant and praises to the mind. God, there is where geniuses are created, in the mind. Give ye thanks unto him in his beneficent form, which is enthroned in the brain, where the mind is enthroned upon the brain. Beings mentally praise thee, beings Zionly praise thee, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, divine intelligence and divine truth marks out thy course for the day by day and every day. Thine enemy, the serpent, had been given over to the fire. The serpent fiend, evil and wicked conception, has fallen headlong. His powers are bound in chains, and his forces and authority of the fire mind carries away with him. Heaven and earth, good and evil, right and wrong, exist in the mind. And there is where we are all challenged every day to see which one is going to reign supreme, whether at an individual level or collectively. The serpent of the mind is a mind that becomes embedded and preoccupied in thoughts and processes that is not geared towards the liberation of our people. Liberate the mind and the people shall be liberated. The sons of revolt shall never more rise up. The house of the aged one, Jah Rastafari, keep it festival. And the noises of those who make it merry are in the great place, the house of Jah Rastafari. The righteous rejoice when they see the fire mind crowned upon his throne, and when his beams flood the universe with light. Once you liberate the mind, and once the mind, you have placed your very life, your very existence within that which you believe, within the proper conceptual, mathematical order of the mind. No one can dethrone you. No man can dethrone you. No system can dethrone you. No obstacle can dethrone you. Because this is how life is. You have become one with life. You are life. Therefore, you cannot die. The majesty of this holy righteous set it out on his journey. And thinking about the correct thinking process. And he goeth onward until he reacheth the land of the west, the east, the body, becometh light at his birth each day. He proceeded until he reached the place where he was yesterday. Oh, be thou at peace with I. Let I gaze upon thy beauty. Let I come and see where truth resides. Let I come and able to place my life within life itself, and where life abideth in conceptual ideas of life affirming concept. Let I journey above the earth. Let I journey above what is physical. Let I journey above what is biological, above the body. Let I smite the evil conception. Let no evil conception come within my cranium where I accept it as part of what life means to me. Let I slit asunder those who are of the devil's mental conception. Let I destroy malignant characteristics at the moment of his greatest power. Where malignant characteristics, bad habits, bad characters, bad ideas, bad conception will always appear more appealing to us when we come into that mental state of feeling subdued, of feeling oppressed, of feeling like giving up. Let I behold the power and force which giveth warning of oncoming evil. Let full I with the mental ability to see negativity even before it reaches within my circumference mentally. Let I be able to decipher our thoughts and action 10 steps before they even decide to manifest itself. Because that is the ability of the brain. That is the ability of the mind. Let I behold the mind of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, righteousness, truth, and justice when they are in charge of the rudder of the mind, with wisdom and understanding, righteousness, truth, and justice on each side of the mind. Help I to nurture the brain into a manner where it organically, where the east and the west of the brain, where the right side and the left side of the brain is those and contemplate and hold amidst an only life affirming thought. And we're going to get into this thing of what we mean by life affirming thought, Because Babylon has taught us many conceptions that appears to be life affirming, but is really a chant to death and the devil's conception. Let I lay all of the power, force, and authority of the mind in other evenings, and lay all of the power, force, and authority of the mind which leads in the evening. Let the mind grant a view of itself in the day, right? I always learn to see the sun as the mind in its more optimal level, and as a sight of itself at night, the moon, and failing each day. Let my inner spirit of being come forth to walk about here and there, and whithersoever it pleaseth. Let my name be called out. Let it be found inscribed on the tablets which recorded the names of those who are to receive offering. Let meals from the sepulchre offering be given to me in the presence of the power, force, and authority of resurrection. As to those who are in the following of righteousness, truth, and justice, let there be prepared for me a seat in the mind of the Rastafari movement on the day whereon the mind is active. Let I be received in the presence of the power, force, and authority of resurrection in the land of truth speaking, the inner spiritual being of inner Rastafari. This new faculty of Rastafari, where the individual I am, where each and every individual has developed the capacity to see life exist only within a body of ideas, where we have come to learn and to accept that studying and research and investigation is a form of worship, where our institutions, our schools, our civic order becomes all a part of worship, all a part of chant, all a part of a life-affirming institutions, where every single thing that we do and think it becomes a reaffirming, life-giving forces of chant to our own very existence and that of our ancestors. That's over there. So again, that is the chant to the fire mind which riseth in the east of Zion of the mind. Each and every day when the brain powers itself. And we must learn to see the reflection of our brain during the day as the sun and in the evening as the moon, ever shining. going through different manifestation and producing. So, brethren and sisters, that is it for lesson 2 from the Rastafari Promise Key Seminary. And we will continue moving forward with these lessons. Like we said earlier in the lesson number 1, each lesson will build upon the foundation of the preceding lesson. So last lessons, the introductory lesson, we point to basically where we are going. And because we are talking about going and taking possession of the mind and places life within how we think, then we are able to build the coming lessons once we have come into this understanding of a basic summary fashion of how the brain function, how the brain get information, how the brain put out information, and give it the mathematical equation of where to place life. So until next time, brethren and sisters, blessings. See the planet.